What is up, Sober Nation? I am back reporting for duty. My name is Veronica Amarante, and I have been MIA for a couple of weeks and for a couple of reasons. We had the holiday season. So thank you, Tori, for holding me down while I was away. But I'm happy to be back with a bang. And I mean, that's kind of like, it's funny. I'm such a dork. Anyway, I say back with a bang because the topic tonight is relationships and sobriety, and I'm a dork, and I know it. But I'm super excited because I have a friend of mine that's joining me. Her name is Stephanie Churma. But what I love about Stephanie is I don't know Stephanie from the rooms. I don't know Stephanie from recovery. Stephanie and I actually know each other. We're connected on Facebook, and we got to know each other through like a mutual group. I think it was like an entrepreneurial group for women. But from that group, there was another group that kind of talked about sobriety a little bit, and we both joined that group. And one day I stumbled one of her posts. She was celebrating an anniversary, and she just listed off in this post like all the amazing reasons why, she was sober, but like all the things she gained. And I mean, this post, I wish I could have like taken a picture of it or something, because I mean, it was just a hell of a post. And I was like, oh my God, why don't I have her on Sober Nation as a guest? I mean, she has so much to add. But what she does for a living is, why she's here and why she was asked to talk about, what she's going to talk about. She's actually a relationship coach. Now, God knows we all could use a relationship coach always, right? But like, how awesome is that? She's a relationship coach. So that's why she's on here addressing the topic that she is, which for those of you that are joining us, hi, thank you so much for joining us. If you're watching real time, thank you for being here right now. If you're watching the replay, we still appreciate you. Tori's with us. She's hanging out in the comments. She's going to be posting the article that was written about this topic. She actually had an opportunity to talk to Stephanie earlier in the week. So she's hanging out with us, and she's hanging out with you guys in the comments section. So thank you, Tori, for being with us tonight. But Stephanie, thank you for being with us tonight. I really appreciate it. Tell us more about yourself. Tell us a little bit about you and how you became a relationship coach.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. We've been anticipating this for a while, so it's going to be a juicy little convo. So I started my relationship coaching business actually in parallel with my own struggles. I had spent let's see, how old am I now? I spent a good 15 years drinking and being incredibly promiscuous. I worked in the entertainment scene. I worked in bars. I was living downtown Toronto, and a lot of my life revolved around the identity of the glamorous bartender and hooking up with the people I worked with. And it was just a mess for a really long time. And I didn't understand why I couldn't really cultivate a really healthy, good love relationship, like that kind, trusting, respectful. I thought it was just out of my reach. And so I didn't understand that the reason why I was having such awful relationships was that I was not in a healthy state whatsoever. So I was continually calling in men who were either a party guy or incredibly turned off. So I was always in this sort of dance of like, what's wrong with me? Like, I think I'm okay. I don't understand what's going on. So I would constantly attract just the wrong fit over and over and over. And I just remember having a moment where I completely surrendered and I was like, I need to know what's going on. And I remember just asking the universe, like, I'll do whatever it takes. I'll figure it out. Just show me what I have to do. And I was still drinking. Like my 29th birthday, I woke up still drunk, and my boyfriend at the time had left in the middle of the night and he was just out. And I was like, I'm going into my 30s still in this mess. And so through some, divine intervention, I ended up leaving the bar scene. Well, I guess I was removed from the bar scene. I couldn't do it. Like, there was just any time I would try to find work, I would end up sabotaging it or drinking my paycheck. It was a mess. And so I had this sort of divine download to do the most opposite of bar work. And I ended up getting a month-long contract working in a warehouse, like steel-toed boots, a hard hat. It was like 9 o'clock in the morning till 2. And I remember being like, yes, I can't get in trouble. Like, I cannot get in trouble. There's no bad influence. I can be a good girl, because I knew at that point that my drinking was out of my control. So I had to physically remove myself from working in those environments. And the guy who trained me on that job is now the man that I'm marrying. So I ended up that was where he was. And so through our relationship, he ended up getting me into treatment through his job. So there's no way, I don't believe I would have gotten well. And so through our love and his willingness to be the guy that could see beneath my mess and help get me well. And I just remember being like, I need to talk about this and figure this out, because I figured out what I was doing wrong. I called in an amazing partner, and my life completely changed. And so sobriety and recovery is really important to where my relationship coaching business began, because there's no way I would still be running around calling in the same people. And so that's why this is so important. And so now it's been four and a bit years, and we have a child, and he'll never see me drunk. It's beautiful. And so now it's like my mission to help women tune into their vulnerability and their identity and give them the courage to figure out who they actually are, so that they can call in someone who can match them on all levels. So there's the cliff notes of how the Good Love Company started.
I love it. And I love the story. You found love and recovery at the same time. That's amazing. Like, that's, you usually, like, when a guy finds out, oh, you may need treatment, like, even like his insight, the fact that he was able to say, like, oh, hey, you may need help, like, that's amazing. Like, you don't find guys like that all the time. So that's just awesome on so many levels, that he was able to be there for you in that way. And then now he's like your husband and like the father of your child, and like you started a family with him. What is it that you actually do in your business? What kind of services do you provide?
So right now I primarily work one-on-one with women. And so we just go through a journey of personal transformation. We work to really assess, why are we stuck? Like, what is the thing that's preventing us from calling in what we want? Because anything that you want, you can have. And if you don't have what you want, there is something deep within you that is not allowing you to have it. So whether it's a worth issue, whether it is an identity of love, if you grew up in a household where you had really crappy role models of what love looks like, you're going to carry that with you and just call in mirrors of that. Mm-hmm. So what we do really is primarily the behavioral aspect. Why do we do what we do? What is the emotional payoff of the choices we make? Because if we want a different life, we have to make different choices. And so through that subconscious rewiring, the energy moves. And when the energy moves, the outer world shifts. And that's when you start calling in different people. As you rise your vibration, you will call in people to match that and lose people who won't rise up with you.
Right. Hi, Lyle. Hi, Ryan. Lyle says, I'm single for 9 years. I'm looking for a relationship. There's a lot of people who are single and who are looking for a relationship. And I think when we get into sobriety, I mean, there's just so many things happening at the same time. And so let's just cut right down to it. The number one rule, or the first thing we get told, Well, the first thing that happens is that we enter recovery and we get encouraged to go to these meetings. And the first thing we notice, right, beyond, what's being said is who else is in the room.
Right.
And we notice, the opposite sex or whoever we're attracted to. So already from the moment we get off the car, we get off the van, however we got there, we're already on the prowl, especially if we're single, right?
Mm-hmm.
So already, like without even noticing, we're looking for something else because we just stopped using, right?
Wow.
So maybe the psychology behind it is that we stopped something that was very important to us. So now we need to focus on something else because God forbid we took a moment to focus on ourselves.
Yeah.
But I'll let you talk about that. But, the number one rule is do not get into a relationship the first year of recovery. Stephanie, what do you think about that?
Well, I think there's a lot of merit behind it. I don't think it's a hard and fast rule. I think that there are some people who have more work to do than others. I think there are some people, like for myself, when I was in treatment, I was done. Like the fact that I was even in treatment, I was like, I will never be here again. I will do whatever it takes. And I knew that I was done. So that is very different than someone who maybe this is their third or fourth time. They still want to experiment. There's different levels of that. So we really need to remember that we are all unique. Sure, alcohol use disorder, just for context sake, is, across the board, we all have the same type of symptoms. We are very often highly, highly sensitive. It's almost like the world is too much. And so sometimes what can happen is that we put down the bottle or put down our vice, and we haven't learned how to be ourselves. We don't even know who we are. So the immediate desire or the urge is to, want to suppress that feeling. We haven't learned how to handle our feelings and emotions. That is why people use and pick up and drink. So in terms of a rule, I think it's really just about rigorous honesty. There are some people who will get into relationships as a way of coping versus doing the inner work, doing whatever program works for you. I'm an AA gal myself. And so I think it's really about, how far along are you in your recovery? Can you have a relationship with yourself? If you can't sit at home with yourself and be chilling, like there's a difference between being alone and being lonely. Mm-hmm. And no other person is going to change how you feel inside. And so the damage and the danger, and I've seen this in the rooms, is that people will start to want to satisfy that urge to feel different, because that's all we want to do. When we're craving, we just want to feel different.
Yeah.
And so people are it's convenient. We're talking, we're sharing, we're going for coffee. It's biology. So I don't think there's a hard and fast rule. I think you just really need to ask yourself, can I be by myself right now and really enjoy my company? Because most of the time, addicts and alcoholics have not enjoyed their own company for years. So that would be the first step. It's not to say you can't form relationships, but your primary focus needs to be on yourself, because that's when you're going to call in a healthy relationship, is when you are healthy yourself.
Amen. No, that is so true. Even prior to hitting bottom, in addiction, and just trying to function normally, that was the thing. You had to be happy with yourself, in order to attract a partner that liked being around you. If you didn't like being around yourself, like how could you ever attract someone else? But then, you get into recovery and it becomes a whole thing. And for me, I know in my experience, it did become, a thing of trying to get the focus off myself. Right. So that I didn't have to do the work. And so I think you're absolutely right. I think it's a suggestion. It's not a rule per se, but I think the important piece is to be working with someone else, to have your sober support, to have your sponsor, to have someone that you can talk to and say, hey, I'm having feelings for someone, or hey, I notice I'm checking out so and so, like, what do you think? And the people around you that are really like your crew, they get you back on track. Yeah. What was it? I mean, I know you were already in a relationship. For you, did you have a challenge coming home back to that relationship once you got out of treatment? Because we're basically right now just focusing on single people, but let's focus on the people who have a relationship and go into recovery and then come out the other end. Like, that's a whole nother dynamic too. So what was that like?
You know what? It was really, really eye-opening. When I was in treatment, I remember, we would get these 15-minute phone calls, and I was, in this fantasy land that we were going to just, carry on. I didn't even tell a lot of people I was going in treatment. I thought I could pull the celebrity card and say I was going away on a month-long retreat. Like, I was in such denial. I was just humiliated. Yeah. And so while I was in treatment, I thought we were just going to go home. I would go to these meetings, I would do my work, and we would be fine. But I had no idea that we would have to rediscover who we were, because our entire relationship, like, we went very fast. And our entire relationship, I drank. So we had to meet each other. I had to learn how to be, a fun, sexy girlfriend without the stereotype of like candlelight and bottles of wine. Part of my addiction was the romanticizing the drink. That was huge for me. Like, why can't I go to the keg and have a martini with my boyfriend? I had to really get real about the fact that me having a martini with my boyfriend is not what I think it is. What it actually is a bottle of wine getting ready, 3 martinis at the restaurant, a drunken argument on the way home, and me convincing him to stop at the liquor store. So I had to really get real. He also had a lot of resentment because we had a 6-month-old child. So I had my son before I went to treatment. And the reason why I got into treatment was because I was shocked that I was still drinking, because I thought, once I get the husband and the baby in the house, I won't need to drink anymore. And once I had my son, I had postpartum depression. My fiance was right back to work, and I was so lost that my brain literally said, we know what to do. Let's go back to the old trusty bottle of Chardonnay, because that was the only thing that was like mine. So when I got back from treatment, we had to learn how to talk, how to go out for dinner. We didn't go to a restaurant for 6 months. I just couldn't. We had to learn how to be. He also had to forgive me, and I had to allow him to be angry. I think so often we sort of say like, well, I'm better now. I went to treatment. I'm going to meetings. Like, what more do you want?
Right.
And I had to really let him process, because I was also different. And, his family was very ignorant. So, they tried to sort of control the recovery. It became a really intense time, because I got out of treatment in November, and then we had Christmas. And so there was so much pressure to be this shiny, happy family. But we had a lot of arguments. We had a lot of tough times because, he was young, and we just had to figure it out. And so I think the hardest part about relationships, like, if you have a relationship while you're in recovery, thank God my partner is not one of us. He's one of those normies. He could like have half a can of beer and be like, oh, I forgot about it. So that made it easy. But there's also the couples who use and drink together. And I have to say, that's a harder road, because you both have to be on the same page with your goals. And from my experience, couples that sort of use together and then try and get clean together, oftentimes it doesn't end up working out, because the basis of your pairing is having a good time and getting loaded, and like, what happens now? So you really need to have a plan and really be in it together. So we've had to, it took some time. We're in a great place now, but it's definitely not that easy in the beginning.
No. No, I
No,
mean,
I mean,
no
no
relationship is
relationship is
easy as it
easy as
is.
it is.
I
I
hear
hear
myself
myself.
back a little bit. Would you mind turning your volume down just in case
Oh,
that
down?
could be it? Yeah. As long as you can still hear me.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm not hearing myself anymore. Um, yeah, no, relationships are tough as it is. So, when you add addiction, when you add recovery, you add kids, you add anything, I mean, you're just asking for it. And for those of you tuning in, thank you again for watching. We are talking about relationships and sobriety. And we have been talking about, Stephanie's experience so far. I know a lot of you have been sharing what you've been up to and kind of what your experience has been. Tori's out in the comments, kind of trying to get back to everyone. It's kind of hard to read and talk at the same time. I'm not that talented. So just know that Tori's holding me down tonight on the comment end. But if you have any questions, let us know. I'm sure Stephanie will come back and answer your questions. But there is an article that accompanied this live, and that's one of the things that we try to do. We try to kind of start the week with the topic, and kind of start having the conversation in the community, in the page, and then we write an article about it, kind of process it, and then we come back on Thursday and have the conversation about it. During that article, you mentioned the wounded bird energy. And I just found that phrase so fascinating. Would you mind talking about what that was about?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think for a lot of us, we can get addicted to saving people or wanting to be the one person to show someone the way. And I always like to call it the wounded bird. It's like that helpless bird in the nest, and someone swoops in and says, just, come into my arms and I'll make it all better. And I think that that is a huge thing. Codependency and addiction go hand in hand, and it's part of it, right? So we really have to be mindful of taking on people like their projects, because some of the biggest devastations is understanding that you cannot change anybody. You can inspire them, you can say this way might be a little bit better, but at the end of the day, you need to focus on you. And it's just very seductive for people in addiction to sort of attract the wounded birds or the people who really need a lot of help, because then we don't have to look at ourselves. We can just
Right.
say, I'm going to put all my energy on fixing you, and it just never works.
Right, right. No, that's so true. And I mean, even, before recovery, I saw myself falling into that pattern of the emotionally unavailable guy, and be like, I'm going to be the one who changes them. And then there's this whole, which I'm not sure what you guys in your field have, I'm sure there's a term for this, but, trying to change the guy. And I know, being two women on the broadcast, I don't want it to come off like we're ganging up on guys. So guys, if you're watching this, please feel free to share your experience, because this is not, we don't want this to be a one-sided conversation. This is for everyone. So feel free to go ahead and leave your comment and share your experience as well. But, I remember that. I remember going through that. And, I've gone through my relationships, and I've been married twice. This is my second marriage, but, I remember going through that and trying to change the guy. And I learned, that's not going to happen. You're never going to be able to change anyone but yourself. And that's what I currently, focus on.
Yeah.
So, what are your thoughts on, people? I think overall people have really good intentions. People want to find the right person. People want to get into a good relationship. What do you think prevents us from, do you think we're all aware of what our patterns are? Let's put recovery to the side for a second, right? Because we know what that is for a second. But do you think that until we break out of a certain pattern, and we all know what that is for each one of us, do you think that pattern will continue to repeat itself? Until we break out of that pattern? Like, what are your thoughts for somebody who's like continues to experience the same thing over and over and over again in relationships?
Yeah, I love that question. I really, really, really do believe that we will continue to experience the exact same lessons over and over and over and over again. People are teachers. So if we have a belief system or a pattern, like I'll share mine. So back when I was a kid, my mom and dad would joke that they never wanted to have kids. My mom was going to get her tubes tied, and ha ha ha, it was a surprise. So my brain as a child, because from 0 to 7, our brain is in theta, so we're absorbing. So what I heard is that I'm not wanted. I
Mm.
was a mistake or an afterthought. So that
Mhm.
sits in my body. And so as I get older, more life happens. My dad ended up leaving my mom. My mom never got over it. And so on top of me thinking I'm unwanted, now I believe that men always leave and women always mourn. So that's layered on top of each other. And this is all subconscious. Like, I don't know this is happening, but what ends up happening is that throughout your life, you will attract into you people that match what you believe to be true. So
Mm.
for a long time, I would attract guys who would leave. I would attract a guy who would kick it for a couple weeks and then I would never hear from them. So my brain would register that's what happens. That's what it is. And so I would just
Yeah.
carry on continually affirming that that's what it's about. And so and that's when I had my come to Jesus moment after my 29th birthday, because he literally left in the middle of the night. And I was like, I need to figure out what's going on. So I really, really, really believe that on a basic level, what you believe to be true about romantic love is what's going to show up in your world. So
Yeah.
if you believe that men are awful or women are bitches, then you will attract the awful guys and the bitchy women to prove yourself right. And
Yeah.
sometimes what can happen is we get so used to that we almost don't want to shift it, because then we have to change and we have to look at things, and that means everything we thought to be true is not, and that can be very uncomfortable and very scary. So for me, it's really about, if your current romantic situation is leaving you feeling bad and not uplifted and joyful and blissful, there's something that you believe to be true that is continuing to affirm it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolute sense. I mean, I remember my whole thing is guys can't be trusted, and that was based on my parents' divorce. And of course, I attracted guys that could not be trusted. And I'm sure, viewers watching have their own version. And please feel free to add in the comments, what was that belief system that you had that kept coming up? But
Yeah.
back to sobriety and back to coming into the rooms, back to, we all hear the joke of like, oh, we fall in love in detox, or oh, we fall in love, or the rehab babies, or, we hear all of that. But let's get real. Like, what are the do's and don'ts of dating in sobriety? And, we're not going to keep it limited to a year. We're just going to go through some basic ground rules, maybe top 3 don'ts and top 3 do's of dating in sobriety.
Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna see what comes out first. So it
Yeah,
might not be
go
in
for it.
order. But what I wouldn't recommend is I wouldn't recommend dating someone who is not willing to respect what needs to happen for you to be healthy. So
Mm,
what that looks like is, if I were single, I certainly wouldn't be getting involved with someone who always has a 2-4 of beer in their fridge, because
mm,
it just I wouldn't feel comfortable. It wouldn't feel right. That's for me specifically.
yeah.
So it's more about, don't get involved with someone who doesn't respect what you need to be healthy. There are women who I know personally who are in recovery who have partners who drink, and that's fine. But if you're coming home to a partner who's passed out drunk with beer bottles everywhere, that's not going to be conducive to your well-being. So that would be the first don't. So anyone who can't respect what you need to be healthy is a don't. The second don't, what's another good don't? You I think honestly, across the board, the biggest thing you really need to do is understand what your intentions and your motivations are. If you are looking for someone to sort of come in and, make you feel a type of way or get you, to sort of bypass your own work, because the honeymoon phase is not a long-term relationship. A honeymoon phase in that, neurotransmitter splash is a moment in time. So sometimes what can happen is we can sort of just become so addicted to the chase and the conquest and like getting that adrenaline rush. So that would be the number one thing. Like we don't want to be using people.
Yeah.
We want to get ourselves into a place where we are feeling esteem and confidence for the first time in a long time. Most people early in recovery are like Bambi. We're trying to walk again. We're trying to just be. I remember feeling like I forgot how to drive. So I'm not in a position to be, getting out of treatment and going on a dating app and putting myself out there. I think a lot of people need to also have boundaries. There has to be some limit of like, if I'm going to allow someone into my space, they have to represent the direction that I'm going in. So is this person, spiritually fit? Does this person have a quest for a great life? Are they going somewhere? If you spend time with them, will your life elevate? These are the types of things you want to ask, because honestly, at the end of the day, you will just continue to repeat the same toxic crap until you draw a line in the sand yourself. So that would be, I think that's like my generalized do, but go into it casually, calmly, meet for coffee. It's a very common thread with people in addiction to go from 0 to 100. So it's like, right? Like we meet someone and it's like, oh my God, I'm feeling so good. Because you also need to remember that depending on how long you've been in recovery for, it takes a while for your brain and your body to recalibrate. So
Mm-hmm.
you're not even really fully there yet. Post acute withdrawal syndrome is a real thing. And so sometimes what can happen is that we are just so uncomfortable. We are just so not used to who we are that it's almost this reaction to say, well, I know what'll make me feel better, being distracted.
Yeah.
So no distractions. They must be a healthy representation. If you want a long-term relationship, you need to be thinking more about just, are they nice and do we do fun stuff? You need to think about, what does your life look like? Is this person going to contribute to my health and well-being long-term? And if they don't, then avoid at all costs and don't get involved with your sponsor. Don't do it.
Sorry, anyways. No, that is such a I mean, I just have so many questions, by the way. And like I wrote out, Tori and I did our homework and we sort of had like our questions and our pointers just because we knew this was going to be one of those conversations where we wanted to get everything in. But I mean, yeah, we need to address the whole 13-step thing at some point. And definitely don't go out with your sponsor. And one of the things that I did want to talk to you about, though, is what about the people who are on break while they get, clean and sober? How should they reapproach that old relationship? Let's say, that person is still, quote unquote, waiting for them. Let's just say they haven't been in touch with them. How do you think that person should reapproach the relationship? Should they, should they put it on hold? Should they make amends? Should they give it a shot? Should they go ahead and wait the year? What's your piece of advice for the person who's kind of has somebody, but is just focusing on themselves right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it really depends on if the other person is well. So it's like, if you, like in my situation, my partner does not have this, I do. It's definitely easier to sort of come back together and make a plan for our lives, because I'm in charge of me and I have a plan. And so he's okay, he's doing himself. But if two people are not really well when they start, and it's like, I'm going to go off and do my thing, you're going to go off and do your thing. Quite bluntly, the track record of success is not the greatest, because two people in their path of recovery are going to have different journeys. So it's not to say it can't happen, but oftentimes two sick people who got together do not necessarily translate to two well people in recovery.
Mm.
Because think about it, it's what's your foundation based on? If the foundation of your relationship is, partying and drinking, and that was sort of what you guys did together, then you guys need to really have a solid plan about what your life is going to look like, because there is going to be a lot of adjustment. So, I've seen it where one partner gets well and the other partner doesn't.
Right.
And it's really sad, because people mean well. Like, I don't for a second think that it's something to be discouraged. Like, I'm an optimist. I'm all for love. Like, I'm all about it. But at the end of the day, you need to make yourself a priority. So for those who have a foundation, who have something with legs, then I really think an amend to the other partner is absolutely required, because we've done a lot of damage, and it's tough to admit, it's tough to hear that our illness or disease or whatever you want to call it caused serious damage. So if you have a foundation to begin with, and one of you sort of went off track and now you're back, you have to have a plan. Like, what's the vision for your relationship? How are you guys going to create a new chapter? What does that look like? Because we need to remember too, in the beginning, you need to be diligent. I went to 90 meetings in 90 days. So that took away from my time with my partner. So there just has to be a lot of dialogue, and you both have to be on the same page. Like, the communication has to be on point, because while you're in the early stages, you are just so all over the place. You don't know up from down. And remember, one of our first relationships is the bottle. Like, my bottle of wine was my boyfriend when I didn't have a boyfriend. It was the constant. I could count on it. It was always there. It never told me anything. And so now when we want to try and have a relationship with an actual person, we're going to have to be vulnerable. We're going to have to talk about our feelings. We're going to have to learn how to have constructive conflict. A lot of people in recovery don't know how to argue. You know what I mean? We have to learn that. And you have to have a partner who's willing to walk with you on that journey, because you're not just going to wake up and be better. It takes time. You're relearning who you are.
Exactly. Now there's somebody on here who has been asking questions for a while. Hi, Bud. Thank you so much for being patient. He says that he's been sober for about, let me see if I bring up, okay. He's been sober for about 20 months. He just found someone who he wants to date. How should he go about it?
Awesome. Awesome question. And congratulations, Bud. That's an amazing accomplishment. So honestly, you get to decide, because here's the beautiful thing about recovery is that you get a fresh start. You get a new life. So you get to decide, like, how am I going to, date this person? What do I want to do? How can we date in a healthy way? Does it look like going for a hike and grabbing a healthy lunch? What new activities can we do together? Sometimes we think that dating and relationships just means drinks at a bar, but it doesn't. So you get to decide. You get to say, hey, I have this really healthy, amazing life, and now I'm ready to have someone in it. I get to have the experience of that. So what would I want a beautiful relationship to look like? What are we going to do? What does our life look like? Get excited about it instead of fearful. And then I would also encourage you to just be open. You don't have to say on the first date, your whole story, but, I would always encourage open dialogue. You can just say, like, let's grab a coffee, let's go for a hike. Sharing an experience with someone will bond you more than this buzzy banter. Like do something fun together and enjoy. And if it's supposed to happen, it'll naturally unfold.
Yeah, and I love what you just brought up. At what point do you reveal in a date, that you are in recovery? Let's say, okay, first let me back up a little bit. Should we reveal, forget the reveal. Should we look in the pool of people who are not in recovery or people who are in recovery? Some of us think that we should date within the recovery pool because they know what we've been through, they know what we need to do, they're not going to ask us questions. A lot of us think too that we should also date outside of recovery because that means that it will be a healthier relationship. But then there's a little trap there. They're not going to give us crap if we don't go to a meeting. Actually, I want to flip a comment. Shelly made a comment, and it's a heartbreaking comment, but Shelly, I'm going to use it as an example since you shared it. She said, I married a recovery alcoholic, an addict, and it didn't last very long. He tore my world up, and now I need recovery for dependency. I'm so sorry you went through that. But you kind of inspired my question is just kind of, we're now in recovery and we now, the world is ours. We can do whatever we want. We've worked on ourselves. We can now choose somebody, who's in recovery or somebody who's not in recovery, and they both come with a risk. Stephanie, what do you suggest?
Well, you just nailed it. Everyone has a risk. The healthiest, kindest, sweetest person can make a human error and devastate you. There is always going to be risk no matter what. That's the name of the game. We sort of, choose someone who we feel our life would be better with, and then we roll the dice. So I don't think that it's like stick to one or stick to the other. I really believe that if you make a pact with yourself to figure out who you are innately and just become so immersed in your own identity work, the right person, you're going to notice, like they're going to find you. And so if it's someone at the end of a meeting who is like, wow, your share really touched me, and you chat for a little bit, fantastic. Feel the feeling of having someone vibe with you. Feel the feeling of, smiling and flirting. Like, give yourself permission to enjoy that. And this at the same time, you could go to a baseball game or go to the grocery store, and there's a quote unquote normie behind you in line. Like, it doesn't matter. Labels don't do anything really. It's just about the energy. So at the end of the day, it's like you can find someone in recovery and hope that they're on the same page as you. Personally speaking, for me, if I were single, I would be a little bit nervous, completely transparent, because my sobriety and my recovery is locked in, and not everybody has that themselves. So for me, with my partner, there's a bit of safety there because he doesn't, I will never have to worry about, finding him in a blackout rage or whatnot, right? Like he's safe for me, but he's also very understanding. So I think at the end of the day, the basic things you need for any relationship: open communication, a shared mission, a shared value. Like, what is the point of your relationship? If the point of your relationship is just to have a party buddy, it's not going to last anyway. If the point of your relationship is to have a life partner and grow old together and enjoy life and have experiences, then you need to make sure that you are a representation of that, because we will always attract in who we are, not necessarily what we want.
Yes, good point. So Bud just came back and said, thanks for the advice. I'm actually taking her to a movie tomorrow night. Okay, Bud, you have to come back next
I'm
Thursday.
so excited, Bud. Big ups to
Let
Bud.
us know how it goes. We are super nosy. So if you tell us this, now we want to know all about how it went and all that good stuff. So I'm so glad you are taking her out.
That's cute.
let's deal with the not so fun part of relationships and recovery, breakups.
Mm,
How
yeah.
do we break up with somebody and stay sober? Right?
Yeah.
Because so many of us, and I know for me this was very true, I used because I did not want to feel. I didn't want to feel anything. I didn't want to feel anything good. I didn't want to feel anything bad. I didn't want to feel anything in between. So when you talk about, a breakup, or you talk about anything awkward or anything that's going to cause me pain, my automatic reaction, without me even, actually like thinking about it, I'm gonna want to numb out. So hopefully, and then by no means am I encouraging this kind of behavior. I'm just sharing, my past experience. I do hope that everybody has all the tools and all the support in the world, but what is your advice for someone who is in recovery, who has probably a casual relationship, is really like not this big, like, we almost got married kind of thing. Let's just say it's something casual, but let's say, you know what, like this isn't working. You're not going to meetings, like we're not vibing. What is the easiest way to just let someone know? You can do it the right way. But let's say you come across someone who just doesn't, hasn't, I don't know, like learn the right coping skills and just kind of freaks out no matter how like you deliver. You obviously have a sponsor and you can process it, blah, blah, blah. But how do you suggest we cut it off with someone?
Sorry, excuse me.
No worries.
So breakups are probably the most painful thing on the planet, but they are divine intervention. It is a beautiful, beautiful gift because we will sometimes let the human sort of drive the bus. So when someone doesn't want to be in our space, we immediately go into what's wrong with me? What could I have done? The pity party for one, all this intense feeling. And it can be really challenging sometimes to sort of go and say, okay, well, what if I tried to believe, even for a minute, that maybe this person was removed because they're not good for me, or someone better is on the way, or they need someone else? Like, what if we could just allow a little bit of wonder instead of making it so about us? Because, and I say this in jest, but addicts and alcoholics are selfish by nature. We think everything is about us. We are so consumed in our own stuff. And so what can happen is that when a breakup happens, we start to internalize it. And that's when the brain goes off saying, no, stop, halt, we don't want to feel this. But
you're not pretty enough, you're not worth it.
And it's not most of the time. And I really feel this, like, I really deeply believe that someone's removal from our life is a beautiful, beautiful gift. Sometimes it's something we can't do for ourselves. And it's not fun, like it's not a walk in the park, but we can decide if we want to make this about us, or if we zoom out and say, okay, is this person, like, have I learned from him or her? Have they learned from me? Am I a little bit better? Can I allow someone to be released? We get so absorbed in our own emotion, but what if that person came into your life to teach you something, but is meant for someone else? Don't you think it would feel better to say, you know what, thank you so much for our time together? In your mind, you don't have to say this out loud, but just take the heat out. Because honestly, and my sponsor says this, and I have a guy sponsor, by the way, which I think is funny. But he always says to me, he goes, drinking when you have a problem is like pouring gasoline on a fire. All you're doing is you're halting the emotional maturity to tackle a problem, which is what you're going to have to do anyway. And you've now just delayed it and made it even worse. And when you get out of that drink or whatever, you're going to feel even more awful. And so what does that do? That creates the craving and the urge to just say, well, fuck it. I've already started. I might as well continue. And we can't let other people have that power. You know, we talk about in the rooms how we admitted we were powerless. Like, let's not have something else take our power too. Why don't we just say, I'm going to look at myself in this moment and pick myself back up and just trust that maybe this happened for a specific reason.
Yeah.
Maybe this guy or this girl is no longer meant to be in my space. And even if we don't know why, or we don't know the timing, or we got hurt, like, it sucks. It totally sucks. But we can choose again. We can, you're allowed to have a day, you're allowed to have a moment, but using and drinking when you're down is just going to bury you, and you've done so much work. So it's really about saying, like, yes, this hurts, and yes, this sucks. Is there a healthy way? Can I go to a kickboxing class? Can I take up cooking? Can I do something? You have to distract yourself in a healthy way so that you can feel better. And when you feel better, you'll start to be able to process without needing to reach out to basically drown yourself. Like, you're poisoning yourself because you feel bad. It's such a ironic statement. So
Yeah.
that's what I would recommend. Like, it happens, and everyone isn't going to be the one. We have
Yeah.
to go through moments. Sometimes it's a season, sometimes it's a reason.
Yeah. No, it's so true. And we're about to run out of, I can't believe it's been almost an hour. Like, I feel like it's been 10 minutes. But one of the things I do, first of all, there's so much to talk about. I mean, we still haven't even talked about sex and having sex while you're sober. We know that's a huge thing. And, we're all adults. We can have this conversation. And so I feel like we do need to have you back on to talk about that, because again, I do recall you mentioning that on that post that I saw, and I just loved your perspective on it. I thought that what you had to say about it was very well said, and it had a lot of insight. So I'd love to hear more about that. But until then, I want to leave everybody kind of with this last question. Let's say you're doing all the right things. Let's say you're focusing on yourself. Let's say you have your year, you have your sober supports, you have your sponsor, you're making your amends, you have your job, things are going great, but you still haven't been able to find that someone. How do you keep going? How do you maintain hope? How do you keep living?
Yeah, and I mean, I get it. I do. It can feel at times like it's never going to happen. I get that so deeply. And for anyone in that space right now, like, I truly honor you. That was my life for a long, long, long time. And so I think, just to get a little woo to end our call, time is a man-made device, right? It's not actually real. Linear time was created to help organize the world. So human beings have sort of adopted this timeline, throw in societal expectations, and then we start to feel this immense pressure. So what ends up happening is we start looking to our neighbor or to our best friend or to Facebook, and all of a sudden we start feeling like there's something wrong with us, or it's never going to happen, or we're going to die alone. So the first thing I would say is to just take a breath and take a moment. There's no such thing as, you can have it and you can have it, but you can't have it. I firmly believe that, because we've all seen not so wonderful, kind people who are married. We've all seen people where it's like, wow, okay, well, there's hope for everyone. Like, I'm just calling it what I see. And so it's really just about, I like to think that when we get impatient, the universe goes, you haven't learned the patience lesson. So we have someone sort of waiting in the wings. You're doing you. We're watching, we're noticing, and we have someone for you, but you keep wanting it on your time. So I guess we're going to do some more work on patience. And so what happens is, and this is my belief system, is that the universe goes, we're just going to pause it a little bit and give you a little bit more to work through so that you can stop fixating on your time. sometimes it's not about your time. Sometimes your job, the space in between relationships, is to learn what patience means, is to learn what faith is to really recognize if you're slipping into self-pity. You have to learn how to enjoy your life. And we forget that there's another person involved. So what if you're all good, but they have some work to do? What
Mm-hmm.
if your ideal person has a couple odds and ends to work out, and then in divine timing, you get invited to your coworker's birthday party and there they are? Like that, it happens all the time. So if you're sort of in that lull, that space in between, recognize that this is a really funky, beautiful time, and you can decide if you want to play with it and enjoy it and explore it with that trust that you're not going to be left in the lurch. It doesn't work. We were born to procreate. We were born to connect. Like that's ingrained in us. It's not going to go anywhere. So just take a step back, take a breath, trust, like learn to really say like, okay, if I have some space right now, what am I going to do with it? Is my house prepared? Do I have space in the closet? And it sounds so silly, but I say this to my clients. Like if the woman or man of your dreams were to knock on your door right now, are you prepared?
Yeah.
Are you ready? Or would you be like, whoa, oh my God,
Let me go
get
put it
ready.
on. Yeah. Yeah.
And then enjoy, and then just watch what happens. Like, and obviously if you have some inner work to do, work with someone who can help you, read a book, take a class, devote that time and sort of get out of the outcome business and allow the world to rearrange, because that's how it happens. Like it happens when you least expect it. Like that's where those things come from. So I would
It's
start
so
there.
true. No, it's so true. When you least expect it, that's when you'll meet someone. And, and I read someone say, Shelly, I think it was you, Shelly, that said it's never going to happen. I don't know what you were referring to, but be careful of those kind of statements because, they become self-fulfilling prophecies. Like if you believe it's not going to happen for you, guess what? It may not. So
Words are
just
wands.
be careful about the stories that you keep telling yourself about relationship. And, we talked a little bit about it when we talked about beliefs. Again, go back and read the article. Tori's going to drop the link in there again. But Stephanie, please tell us when people can find you, where they can find you, how they can connect with you. You have so much great information to share. I know you have programs going on all the time. I know you do lives all the time and talk about, this is your jam. This is all you do. So please tell people where they can connect with you.
Yeah, awesome. This was such a blast. So I am searchable on all social medias. On Instagram, I am at Good Love Co. My VA is currently working on my website, so you will not be able to find it, but find me on social media and I would love to serve. This was so much fun. Like I truly hope everyone who watched felt a little better, got something out of this.
Yeah, no, trust me. And these are the people that are with us now live. And I thank you so much for taking the time to join us live. But plenty of people watch the replay. And then this gets uploaded to YouTube and a broadcast. And so it's just a ripple effect. So please, feel free to come back and drop, any link, if you want your social media page, whatever, feel free to come back, drop it in the comments so people can go ahead and find you right away and you can make it easy for them to find you. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. You have to come back and join us. Again, there's so much to talk about when it comes to relationships. I thought about co-parenting. I thought about sex and relationships, and there's just, codependency. There's just so much. So, you're welcome back anytime. Thank you again for taking this time to join us.
I appreciate it. It was such a blast. Thanks for everyone watching. Tori in the comments holding it down. Love her. And
Yes.
Anytime. It was a blast. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tori. Thank you, everyone watching. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.